Get the cheese to sick bay. The doctor should look at it as soon as possible.
It is the way in which we propagate our species.
Please demonstrate how this is accomplished.
So, what's next? I don't know.
Welcome to Casual Trek, a Star Trek recap and ranking podcast. I'm Charlie Etheridge Nunn, a writer and an X-Men Evolution fan, even though, criminally, it is not on any UK streaming platform.
Hi, I'm Miles Reed Labato. I am a writer, and in terms of Western cartoons, I probably have to also be an X-Men Evolution fan, but I can get it on the horrendous monopoly of Disney+. If we're talking about Japanese cartoons, I am a lover of Mobile Suit Gundam.
Really? I hadn't heard this about you before.
No, it's a very subtle thing.
Yeah, so I have the Disney Channel Plus app, and we don't have X-Men Evolution. It's shocking.
Does it have X-Men 92?
Of course it has X-Men 92. It only has X-Men 92.
So not even Wolverine in the X-Men?
Nah.
Wow.
Yeah, 92's the only... I don't resent X-Men 92. It's fine. But when it is the driving force for every incarnation or anything like that, it chafes one slightly. So yeah, anyway.
Actually, I'm going to change my answer from X-Men Evolution to probably Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, okay. I think I made it through one season of that, possibly half a season, and it felt like something that was good, but with room to go.
It builds. It builds. It's like with Clone Wars. Like Clone Wars starts kind of and then really builds to really, really good, amazingly good. We're just going to do an episode homaging the Third Man, which is brilliant, and then go back down to really good.
So, yeah, that feels like that's going to be very much the theme for today.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we do is each episode we watch stories from 3 different Star Trek shows and we rank them on a big list of best to worst. We both love Star Trek, but it's far from our first fandom, which makes us the ultimate objective voices on such a task. This time, we're going to be going boldly into the animated shows. As it turns out, there's enough for us to take an episode from 3 whole different shows. Who'd have thought that'd be a thing? And certainly before, 5 years ago or so, you'd never go, oh yes, the many Star Trek animated shows.
The numerous.
Yeah.
The plural.
Exactly, yes. So, before we go on, what non-Star Trek thing have you been animated about since we last spoke?
Well, as much as I would like to go on about the new entry in the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, I see I can only beg your patience enough talking about Gundam, so I'm going to talk about a film I saw, which was Halloween Ends.
Oh.
Which is the final entry of the current Blumhouse trilogy of Halloween films starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Because let's be honest, Halloween has a more screwed up timeline and chronology than Star Trek. It's rebooted itself at least 3 separate times. And this current film, Halloween Ends, is like the last of the trilogy from the 2018 Halloween film, Halloween Kills, and now Halloween Ends. It's been very controversial on Twitter because you either like it or you hate it. And I have been called an artsy fucking douche from someone who said anyone who likes Halloween Ends is one of those people who's fascinated by watching paint dry. I responded maturely by quoting him in a photo of me literally watching my wall.
Oh, good.
It was a good film. I can see why people don't like it because it does try and do something different. It's not just Michael Myers goes on yet another kill spree, which we've seen many, many Halloween films. And I feel kind of goes in like a Stephen King It kind of direction where Michael's almost a malevolent evil, which is influenced in this small town America. The ending, though, made the audience I was in and myself burst out laughing because it was just an idea, an image, which really need to be reconsidered because it just felt more comedic than anything else. And after some very emotionally powerful moments recently and earlier in the film, it really felt like the wrong kind of mood switch.
Oh dear. I saw the first 2 Halloweens when I was told I'm not a proper scary movie fan if I've not seen the original Halloweens. So borrowed the first 2 on VHS, because I'm old.
Was it the double VHS?
No.
When it has both films on one... Okay, because I had that as a kid, but the quality was terrible, and because Halloween is a film which has a lot of very dark lighting, you can't see shit in that film. I was so glad when I got it on DVD and can go, oh, so this is what's happening when all these people are screaming.
I think that might have been a general issue with VHS release or something for it, because I remember thinking, this is incredibly dark. I don't know if it was the terrible pan and scan like television or the ancient God. VHS tapes that I borrowed from my friend Goth John or what, but yeah, it was good, but also there was a lot that wasn't easily visible.
Was Goth John the guy who worked in the comic shop who had the logo of the Invisibles tattooed on his arm?
That's him, yes. Yeah, he's actually going by his original name of Gordon these days, and I was called in to the shop on the assumption that there had been a burglar, because I was the one who lived nearest, and it turned out to have been him having gone in after a night out drinking to just fall asleep on the shop floor. And one of the neighbours phoned my boss up and said, I think you've got a burglar.
Was this back in the day or when Dave's was actually still alive, or was this back when it was still... okay, wow, yeah. Gordon, his actual name was Gordon.
Yep.
Yeah, Goth Gordon doesn't work.
No, he went with John because it was more... Yeah, it was less Gordon-y.
Yeah, Goth Gordon just sounds like a member of the Young Conservatives.
Oh, no.
No offense to Goth John, but Goth Gordon, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, but in my mind and my heart, he will always be Goth John.
So what non-Star Trek thing have you consumed this week?
So originally I was rummaging around in the old Mind Canal, hoping to find something animated for this animated episode. And I've gone almost the exact opposite way round for it. And I've been enjoying the video game Hitman.
Ooh.
Yeah, now I tried Bloodborne, and I may go back to it one day. And I find it's the kind of thing that I get very impatient with, and I find it very difficult to master in very short bursts over, once a fortnight for maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. With my impaired reaction time and my terrible short-term memory, that's just not going to happen. However, Hitman's been a real joy. It's been like the level of creativity that you can put into a game of Hitman, I have really grown to appreciate. And originally this was mostly because my partner and I, when we've had a short amount of time, but not much, like that we want to watch, like we don't want to get into anything big, we'd watch some outside Xbox videos, and they've done hundreds on Hitman, often showing different ways that 3 of them are trying to approach a kill. And for me, I'm not a fan of the idea that there's one best way for this sort of thing. You have to have this optimal fashion, but watching them mess up, watching them adapt to things going awry, watching how much you can actually get away with, got me going, I have Hitman 1 from Games with Gold. So I started playing on that, started enjoying it, and in the matter of a week and a half, I think I've managed to get cheap secondhand copies of Hitman 2 and 3. So now I have the whole shebang, and it's the kind of thing where sometimes you can come up with incredible Machiavellian plots. Sometimes you go, I'm halfway through this plot, but that guy's on his own, and I've got a screwdriver that it just wants to be in his head. So I'm just going to fling it. And my word, the screwdriver's become my weapon of choice at this point. So yeah, it's been good fun. I'm curious to see how I develop with it, because already I'm starting to see opportunities a bit better for creative murders. But I'm also not at the point where I'm going around a real place in the real world and going, if I was a hitman, how would I murder a person here? So I've not gone too far yet.
Charlie, a crazy person wandering around Brighton in a long coat carrying a screwdriver threateningly is Tuesday.
I mean, that's just London Road.
Yeah, that's this level.
I don't know. Like the level at least feels a bit more jovial than that. A bit more kind of
Despite all the cat.
Yeah. You're kind of your clusters of man with dog, and your kind of small fires and DJ setup that's been kind of, I don't know where they keep it, but it's appeared. Again, there's a party atmosphere to that, even if it's not one you would really want to get too near to. But London Road, if you want a man shouting angrily at a bucket for taking his cigarettes, you're on the right track. Anyway, this is not a London Road podcast.
Do you know where you're not going to find a man shouting at a bucket for stealing his cigarettes?
Where?
Star Trek, the animated series.
Hooray! Yes! Well, that's a wonderful segue, Mars. So, yeah, with that in mind, our first episode of the night is Star Trek, the animated series, Season 1, Episode 1, Beyond the Farthest Star. Now, I had a bit of worry that this was going to be like the original series, where all the episodes were aired out of order and produced in different orders and all of that. But then I realised I'd accidentally just been looking at Season 2 of the animated series instead. So I'm pretty sure we've both seen the same episode, and that it's the right one here. Beyond the Farthest Star aired on the 8th of September 1973. It was written by Samuel A. Peoples. Peoples? I think it was
Peoples?
Yeah, I've realised after the last episode how much autocorrect messes with things when I'm writing these notes on an iPad. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was written by Samuel A. Peoples, directed by Hal Sutherland. The UK and US #1 hits were, for my side of the pond, Donny Osmond with Young Love / A Million to One. And on your side, it was Marvin Gaye with Let's Get It On.
Okay, I think that from my side, I think we win.
Yeah.
If we ask my mum, I think Donny Osmond would win.
Don't know if I've ever actually heard of Donny Osmond. I've only known of him through comedy bits from old comedians.
Yeah.
But even so, I'm pretty sure Marvin Gaye has stood the test of time far more with Let's Get It On than anything Donny Osmond's done. This feels shockingly early in the episode after the last couple of episodes that we've had, and the sheer weight of distractions that we've put ourselves through.
As Marvin Gaye said, let's get it on.
Let's get it on. So, you've got 5 minutes to recap us the Star Trek animated series first episode, starting now.
Star charting. The Enterprise is charting the uncharted regions of uncharted unchartedness while investigating some strange radio signals when they nearly get pulled into a dead star, which almost pulls them to their death through hypergravity.
Ooh.
They manage to escape by planning a slingshot effect to safely nudge them into an orbit and not crashing. If Chekhov were here, and Chekhov is not here, we would call this Chekhov's slingshot effect. Deciding to explore further, we got like 20 minutes of episode to fill after all. They discover a giant spaceship, which looks more like a series of large insect hives than anything constructed that we usually see in Star Trek. Quick, Kirk, Spock, Bones, Scotty, put on your ready Brek belts. We're gonna beam into a vacuum of space. Every pod has been burst open from the inside, Spock concluding that this was definitely an inside job and the crew did it themselves. While exploring and while Scotty's kind of like geeking out about how this metal was more spun than forged, they feel something is watching them. Entering a secondary location, you never enter a second location, they find this new room, which has blocked their phasers and communicators. Spock thinks that this room was intentionally jerry-rigged to protect the people of this ship while they blew open the ship. As they're investigating, this force starts banging on the door, trying to break in, and the equipment flashes, and we see this octopus-headed alien warning of danger in this really kind of slowed down voice, and that they actually drew the ship into the orbit of the Dead Star to stop this entity from escaping to other ships. At this point, everything starts blowing up, and the away team kirk it the hell out. So they transport back. Oh, turns out, when they transported back to the Enterprise, they brought basically the color out of space with them. Kirk then body slams the poor guy who's on transporter duty to try and beam the alien back out into space, but it's too late. And now the ship is now being possessed by the alien entity. Hiding on the bridge, the plan is to find a way out. Kirk orders Scotty to go down to engineering and make sure the self-destruct system is primed and ready, and to make sure that this creature ain't escaping. While they're doing this, parts of the ship's life support system starts shutting down around them, forcing more people to get on their Ready Brek belts. The Ready Brek belt is actually a life support belt, which makes a glowing halo effect.
It's like a highlighter around them.
Yeah, because the show can't afford to animate people in spacesuits. Whereas in the notes, the ship's phasers come online by themselves and blow up the alien ship. The alien force is slowly but surely learning how to control the ship by itself. An alien voice starts to speak out over the sound system, telling them to kind of just surrender and give up, and start shooting at the bridge crew with this defense system, which has never been seen before and never been seen again, which is a disco ball which shoots phasers.
And they should bring that back.
And they should bring that back. Kirk uses his life support belt and throws it onto the control console in order to prevent the alien force from reaching navigations. And then Kirk rolls out of the way, which is an incredible bit of animation for a show which is lacking in animation. So now they can control the ship, but they control nothing else. Kirk asks Spock if he can calculate a slingshot effect without using the computer. Thankfully, this is what Spock does in his free time. So, he's already planned it out. And they send the Enterprise hurtling towards the planet, towards the dead star. The entity realizes that Kirk and the crew would rather die than let themselves be enslaved, and the entity promptly jumps from the Enterprise to the dead star, at which point they use the slingshot effect to slingshot around the dead star and go off, hurtling safely away to the entity, which is now imprisoned as part of a dead star, crying and pleading for help. The Enterprise crew decide for once to not do a Starfleet and just leave the entity forever alone beyond the farthest star.
Ooh, with 2 seconds to spare.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I knew this was going to be a close one with these. But yeah, they really don't do a Starfleet with that, don't
they? Don't.
Yeah. Oops. I mean, at that point, it was a bit of a whiner.
Yeah.
Miles, Chekhov's had a bit of a makeover in this.
Yeah, Chekhov is briefly a guy in a red uniform and black hair, and then next time you look back, he's this free-armed alien dude.
Yeah, now that free-armed alien dude gets no lines in this and is pretty much just stationary there, but he's a thing in this series, isn't he?
He's not a thing, he's a person.
Sure, yes. Yeah, as much as anyone who's lower ranked.
Charlie, don't be space racist.
Okay. Learn from Trip's mistakes.
Do a Starfleet, don't do a Trip.
Of course. So
don't do a Bacula.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want that to be what Bacula's associated with. He always seems so nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so why wasn't there a Chekhov?
Because they could only afford so many people.
Oh.
And originally, they weren't even going to have Nichelle Nichols as Uhura. But Leonard Nimoy was just like, okay, no Uhura, no Spock. Because, apparently he was like, but the guy who's going to play Bester in Babylon 5, yeah, sod him. Yeah. Sadly. But yeah, obviously, because there's a lot of... this is my most viewed Star Trek show. Because I watched this when I was a kid. It's one of my earlier regular Star Trek experiences, because they had this on Blockbuster Video, and it used to get aired at 6 a.m. on Sky One, or on BBC Two, and the 10, 11 o'clock slot during summer holidays. So I've watched this show a lot.
It somehow completely missed me. The sort of times that I would tend to watch a Star Trek were that kind of mid-morning Sunday or early evening kind of weekday sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's mostly been seen by me in Brighton's open market in a secondhand DVD place in a weird, like, bright white and see-through orange clamshell DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah, one that no one has ever bought, and that I kept thinking I would have to, because it wasn't on Paramount Plus over here. Luckily, Netflix had it, so that copy will remain unsold in that place until, I assume, the heat death of the universe.
Yeah, you never know.
So yeah, I got a couple of Strange New Worlds episode 2 vibes early on, when it was like, oh, it's weird alien entity. Is it like, what's it trying to do? What's it trying to kind of, like, almost trying to communicate with this very alien, very different thing? Especially, you got to play with a giant seaweed looking spaceship and aliens that look weird.
The ship looks cool.
Mm.
Like, as much as I will knock, as a kid who grew up on He-Man and Bravestar, I will knock their animation quality, but they know how to paint a background. Yeah. Like, they know how to paint, like, a landscape, and the spaceship looks alien. I really don't want to say, despite the fact I said the color out of space, I really don't want to have to go to Lovecraft's well too many times when talking about this episode.
No, I mean, the entity by the end, I felt a bit sorry for it, but at the same time, it was a bit of a whiner. It was very much like, oh, this is my ship now, and getting very fussy and lasering everyone, as you say, with the disco ball laser of doom.
I love Kirk body slamming the guy out of the way. Like, when I was watching it last night, and this sort of happened, it was just like, I just couldn't help but laugh hysterically, because for a show which has so little animation, that was an intentional choice. It's like, Kirk just can't we can't just show the guy doing it, because that won't cost money. We need to show what a rugged man of action Kirk is by basically just punching his own officer in the face, like, out of the way. Kirk's doing this, baby.
Is it one of those things where that's literally the only way he has of interacting?
Maybe, quite possibly. It's the only way to have a display in character, because, like, with the exception of, like, we get to see Scotty be an engineer, and we get to see Spock be really clever, but all the other characters just have no character beats. You can just kind of chop and change with any kind of generic space cartoon, and, like, you could just put the same episode and put it as an episode of Ulysses 31. You wouldn't have changed much, except, like, instead of the teleport guy, I don't know, Ulysses would have body checked his own son, or that bloody robot.
Yeah, ideally the robot. But yeah, the other thing I realised was I knew that they reused a lot of similar animation beats, like them kind of running at the screen, like they're kind of almost, I don't know, something weird going on with the elbows.
They're power walking.
Yeah, I didn't expect the silhouettes, like the weird tiny little nondescript you couldn't tell what they are sort of silhouettes. That was impressive. Is that a regular feature?
It is. This show is cheap. Like, this show makes, like, 60s Who look like Star Wars at times.
Amazing.
And, like, so yeah, you get a lot of, like, you will get, like, a lot of background, like, silhouette shots of people walking, because we can't afford to color in, like, clothes. You do get some, you will see Kirk and Spock doing the run.
Yeah.
Like, a couple of times an episode. Like, it is the patented, I need to use the bathroom now.
Oh, God.
Run.
Yeah, well, sometimes needs must and all that.
Yeah. Like, this cartoon, this always makes me feel, I don't know if you have this with you, when a show you watched in a childhood makes you think about the time you watched it. This always feels like something you watch at 6 a.m. when everyone else in the house is asleep, and you're just in the living room watching this weird show with everything, with no lights on, volumes turned down really low, so you don't wake up your parents, and you just kind of feel isolated, which kind of really helps with this episode, which is, out in deep space on this weird ship where everything is dead.
It does feel quite nice and out of the way, and they feel far from Starfleet in this one. It feels interestingly isolated, which works with the name. And and the whole Dead Star thing, which was also kind of fun, and means somewhere out there is this entity still just trapped in a dead star.
So, where do you think it goes in the list?
Yeah, so we have a list. It's very exciting, mainly because it's in a spreadsheet, and I have a deep romantic love of spreadsheets. On the number 1 spot, we still have Deep Space Nine, episodes 1 and 2, Emissary. And right down at the bottom, at number 18, we have Enterprise, episodes 1 and 2, Broken Bow. This is a status quo that's been the case since our first 2 episodes of Casual Trek. And we've got a lot more entries in between. And to be honest, this was one of those episodes that isn't objectionable. It's not like the Thor or Broken Bow, but it's at the same time, it's not good. It's just it kind of fits that sort of meh sort of space.
I honestly, I'm looking at the list.
Mm-hmm.
I think the highest episode I could quite happily rank it above would probably be Cat's Paw, which is currently skulking around with its arms folded at number 12.
Okay, so I was also looking at Cat's Paw, but almost the other way, and I know from last episode, there's a kind of deep internal want of you to make Cat's Paw episode 13, which is where it would go, being as it's currently in spot number 12. Personally, though, I would so readily watch Cat's Paw over this. Like, if we're talking, we've got a TV tuned somehow with just 2 things on, and it's been a long day at work, and I'm watching an episode of Star Trek. If it's Cat's Paw or Beyond the Farthest Star, it's got to be Cat's Paw. Like, it's definitely not better than Matter of Honor. It's... God, would that make this better than Encounter at Farpoint? That's the other issue.
Honestly, yes. I would say this is better Encounter at Farpoint because, okay, Encounter at Farpoint has everyone just talking in their character bios. This has no one displaying any character and has
okay,
and has Kirk rugby tackling a dude for no good reason. So yeah, this is it. This is better than Encounter at Farpoint.
Oh my word! It does have the merit of being about a third the length of Encounter at Farpoint, at least.
Yup, there is no philosophizing. There is no quoting of Shakespeare. There is no Patrick Stewart just staring at the camera going, "This is my career. This is my career. Gone like dust in the wind."
Oh,
dust,
see, I am
wind.
I'm very much. I'm very much looking forward to the point where Patrick Stewart breaks, where he's given up on that and becomes Jean Lima Picard, you know?
See, at the same time, this doesn't have anyone running around spraying, I don't know, Arex pheromones to get the to chase the entity away. Not yet.
Okay, I'm willing to say better than Encounter at Farpoint. I'm still unconvinced about Cat's Paw. Like, it doesn't have the Elder God clangers or the weird cat, that kind of thing, right?
Speaking of weird cats, Willie, my own cat, is kind of skulking around my chair. So I think I'm going to have to say this is worse than Cat's Paw. Otherwise, he might just throw up my carpet.
Oh dear. Yeah, best not to encourage that kind of thing.
Yeah, because as we all know, Cat's Paw is my cat's current favorite episode of the list.
Yes.
If you had a list which was a big Trek list comprised of episodes my cat likes, it's just Cat's Paw all the way down.
It's just that one. I might have to add that as a tab to the spreadsheet. We'll see. We'll see if there's a second entry at some point. But that means at place number 13, we have our first animated episode with Beyond the Farthest Star. Excellent. So episode 2 of today's selection is Star Trek Lower Decks. And this is season 1, episode 1, titled Second Contact. Oh God.
Sorry.
Oh
No,
God, I've already gone over.
Yep. Sorry, I was just setting my alarm and making sure that I've got the red alert sound this time. Well,
Okay, so this aired on the 6th of August 2020. It was written by Mike McMahon and directed by Barry J. Kelly. The UK and US number one hits I meant to listen to before we started the episode because I have no idea what either of these are. The UK had Joel Corry, Head and Heart, and US had Da Baby featuring Roddy Ricch with Rockstar. Miles, any clue?
those are words. Those are just words.
They're words. Okay, we will carry
They're
on.
words and names. They're vague verbal pictograms.
Yeah, so we're old, and
I try to, despite the fact that I spend a lot of time working with the youth culture, I am not, as the kids say, lit.
Yeah, I figured that as someone who works in shops and such, there'd be music or radio or something on, and that you might have slightly more knowledge than me of this.
No, because whenever we could choose playlists at the coffee franchise, which should not be named anymore, and it was just like 80s. It was either 80s or jazz, and I usually chose jazz to piss off everyone else.
That is a cruel move.
I had someone who didn't like jazz, and I would repeat the line from the Mighty Boosh: "You fear jazz. You fear its lack of shapes. Oh no, it's hard. Oh no, it's smooth. Oh no." Because I'm that level of hipster.
Terrible.
I'm a Mighty Boosh quoting hipster.
Oh my God, the worst kind. Right, anyway, on that distressing note for your colleagues, and I hope they're doing a lot better. Unfortunately, if they're still working in that coffee shop.
No, they're not. It's great.
Oh.
It's kind of great. Anyway.
On that Schadenfreude-filled note, let's start.
No, wait.
Oh.
Let's get it on.
So, Lower Decks. We start off with a mission statement from one Brad Boimler, giving us the rundown of what it's like being the administrators who come along after the sexy, dramatic first contact scenarios. That's what he's into. That's what the Cerritos is into. Then we actually see him in a cupboard on his own, giving a speech to himself before he's caught by Beckett Mariner. She immediately does her best to represent my fears for what this cartoon was going to be like post Family Guy by darting around like Woody Woodpecker, fucking about with references. Hey, do you know Romulan whiskey? Do you know what a batleth is? That's as good as being funny, isn't it? Ugh. So, opening credits happen. And it's all very nice, very Trek, mostly the ship running away from things and getting partially eaten. And we luckily move on to someone else with Devana Tendi, who's very excited to be here and ignores how jaded everyone else seems to be about, being a Lower Decks worker. She reports to Boimler, who's losing a fight against a broken replicator, and Mariner decides to come along and join the two of them having a bit of a tour of the ship. The cast gets rounded out with Sam Rutherford, who was injured recently, has a Vulcan cybernetic implant which is glitching out and playing with his emotions and lowering things like his ability to process freaking out that he's got a date with another ensign, Ensign Barnes. Luckily, Mariner fixes that and he starts freaking out to an appropriate level. Down on the planet Galar, which I believe is an Australian insult, Commander Ransom is helping arrange things with the Galadonians when he's stung on the neck by an insect. More on that shortly. Boimler gets called in by Captain Freeman, who wants him to spy on Mariner and report back anything that she's done that's not up to board, that's, suspicious or anything like that. And then we split the team. So Boimler and Mariner head down to the planet to help with any final bits of second contact, setting up equipment, that sort of thing, and the others up on the Cerritos. Boimler thinks Mariner's doing some secret arms trades, and she's actually doing secret farming equipment trades. But there's no time to process that yet because Big Spider! Oh no! Up on the Cerritos, the date between Rutherford and Barnes gets wrecked when Ransom turns into a highly infectious rage zombie. Even so, they still kind of treat it like it's a date, as this isn't Starfleet's first rage zombie outbreak by a long shot. Boimler and Mariner on the planet hide in a tree using their clothes as decoys for the giant spider, and Boimler can't really catch a break. His uniform's destroyed, and he's attacked by the spider anyway. The Galadonian farmers reveal that the spider's a herbivore and just gumming him, I guess.
It'll upset the milk.
Yeah, exactly. After all of that, he's left naked, hurt, and covered in purple goo. The date/rage zombie outbreak is going fairly well until Rutherford sees a malfunctioning door and is more fascinated with that than the dramatic kiss he's just had with Barnes. Oh well. Tendi is introduced to her supervisor, who's a rage zombie, and while she's trying to be polite, he keeps vomiting black ichor on her, and she ends up having to hold the exposed heart of another member of the crew, which is horrifying in the moment, but kind of fun anyway. The stories collide when the away team beam back up, see everything going awry, and Dr. Tahana sees the goo on Boimler. She uses that to make a cure, and ultimately all the credit is given to the upper decks folks. Boimler, despite all of this, or possibly because of all of this, he doesn't squill to Freeman about the secret farming equipment deals Mariner was doing, and back in the 10 forward kind of canteen area, Mariner decides she's going to be his mentor, and then she's right back to Woody Woodpecker reference-giving mode. Again, this is the same as comedy, isn't it? We've all seen Family Guy. We know what that's like. The end.
Charlie, I don't believe it.
What?
I don't believe it. You did it with 12 seconds. No, you did it with 12 seconds to spare.
I underran!
There you go.
Oh, Kalukale! Oh,
Excelsior!
oh my word. They said it couldn't be done.
I knew it. As your mentor in this situation, I knew you could do it.
Phew.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Briefly, what is the worst date or date call-off you've ever had?
God, that's difficult because I've had a lot that were just damp squibs or just literally no call, no show kind of things where I was obviously naive and desperate enough. I hung around the same place where I was supposed to meet the person for maybe an hour, maybe two, going, did I get the right time? And then never heard from them again.
I once had someone the night before get drunk and end up on a train to Sheffield. This was not in Brighton, this was in High Wycombe when I was at uni.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh, actually, yeah. I have a relationship that kind of ended in abrupt ghosting kind of thing, actually, rather than just a date. I had someone disappear with 50 quid and a bunch of Buffy videos.
Wow.
Yeah. And it exacerbated, it kind of added to the need to upgrade to DVD. But yeah, that was the time I dated a busker. And yeah, it wasn't great.
No.
Anyway, more on Lower Decks. I forgot, given I love Lower Decks at the moment, I have been watching season 3 and really enjoying it.
Yeah.
This episode brought me right back to the reason I didn't watch it until maybe halfway through season 2. I saw the look, the style, and while it's not got the cheapness of the animated series, it's got that kind of big, round eyes, American Dad, Family Guy kind of look that just makes...
Because of Mike McMahon, I can't help but think of Rick and Morty. And so, going by all the trailers, kind of like going how the characters are presented, I was really worried that this show was... I am not a fan of Rick and Morty. I've tried. Like, it's fine. I think sometimes the writers of earlier Rick and Morty, and definitely the fans of Rick and Morty, are a bit up their own arse about how good and how deep Rick and Morty is.
Yeah.
There's my hot button topic. So I was worried that this was going to be the same. Like, this is going to be a much more cynical show where Mariner's going to be shown to be more in the right and Starfleet's going to be shown in the wrong. And the first episode does have some of that, but I feel like from the second episode onwards, the show really is a lot better than how it's presented here.
Yeah. Now, I'm more pro Rick and Morty than I'm pro Seth MacFarlane kind of cartoons. Like, those I find like just the lowest form of comedy. Again, references
Yeah.
are the same as making a joke kind of thing.
It's the Ernest Cline theory of literature. If I reference The Last Starfighter enough, is my novel ripping off The Last Starfighter any good? The answer, no.
No.
No, it is not.
I've realised, actually, when I first got Disney Plus, I started watching The Simpsons because I realised I'd stopped watching around season 8 or 9 when I was younger. And there was a lot there, and I heard it got bad. And the morbid part of me kind of wanted to see when it died, inside. And watching it, I think we gave up around 15 or so season wise, and it's a rapid drop off before it becomes the kind of thing that I've realized you also get in your Family Guys, that kind of thing where there's less of a story and more just a bunch of skits that look a bit like a story, don't really have a through line or anything like that, and just get a bit tedious. But
I think that's just generally been a problem with a lot of comedy over the last few decades. Definitely since Friends and maybe your Seinfeld, when you have your shows which really aren't about anything, but they're essentially characters who get increasingly more mean-spirited, just exchanging witty quips back and forth and no actual situation in the situational comedy. Did watching this... No, your face is kind of either regenerating like in Doctor Who, or you're making just face shapes.
Okay, so I'm going to have to push back a little with things like Seinfeld in that respect, because there are stories and through lines. And yeah, sure, the people are mean, and the theory is that it's a show about nothing, but we all know that there's the kind of lie about that. A lot is about extremely minor petty grievances. But compared to a lot of those kind of your Family Guy type shows, it at least feels like there's a coherent thing. And it isn't reliant on going, hey, you liked Mr. T. Do you remember when Mr. T rapped? Well, we're doing a bit about that, and then we'll move rapidly on to something else and just be, I don't know, fairly mean-spirited. So with this, I did want to go on after seeing episode 1, because it felt like it was localized to Mariner at the start and end, and I don't know if those were written separately to the rest, as far as the timeline of what the writer did, or if they just calmed the fuck down with it, because they still refer to a lot of events in Star Trek more than I would expect your average person in the world to.
The references get a lot, but I feel they kind of either they get better at it, or I'm lizard brain enough to go, I remember that reference, which is hypocritical in me, because I'm usually the first in line to complain about when things do that.
Yeah.
Note, this is the one Star Trek show I watch regularly with my wife Rihanna, because this has been her gateway. This is her Star Trek gateway drug.
And I think because for a lot of people it will be.
Yeah, because it's honestly what this reminds me of is Red Dwarf, because it's a sci-fi show which uses the workplace comedy and the flat share comedy, and then just bump it into a space show into a sci-fi narrative. And I would say Red Dwarf in its prime of the first 5 seasons is not only some of the best comedy writing, but also some of the best SF writing. And I will say this unabashedly, I think that Chris Barry as Arnold Judas Rimmer might be one of the most fascinatingly multifaceted characters that science fiction TV has ever given us.
Oh god, he's someone you can pity and empathize with and see some of yourself in the petty parts of, but also hate with every part of your body.
He's a pathetic smeghead, but at the same time, yeah, he's a pathetic smeghead, but you also see why he's a pathetic smeghead and why he can't escape from his pathetic smegheadness. And again, like this first episode feels like a version of Red Dwarf we would have gotten if Rimmer was the lead character and Lister was his sitcom nemesis and not the other way around.
Yeah, it's a very basic, petty kind of point with this sort of story, this sort of narrative. But having Boimler as the fun-hating nerd and Mariner as the wacky, kooky one who gets in scrapes is at least a more interesting thing than if you had the guy being the wacky one who gets in scrapes, the woman tutting all the time. Because, weirdly enough, we've seen that for decades already with that kind of attitude towards the roles.
Like, this gets, Lower Decks gets so much better and develops the characters in really fascinating ways and still manages to keep, like, a fun plot going. Sadly, my favorite side character of Shax doesn't get enough to do. But then he hasn't met Rutherford, who out of the four might be my favorite character, because I love, like, Shax calling Rutherford Baby Bear. I never get tired of his nickname being Baby Bear. Or just Shax being, like, this homicidal psychopath who loves his job.
You see that all through all of this world presented in Lower Decks. Even with Mariner, like, she hates a lot of what she has to do and hates a lot of the job, but she is good at it and knows it. While, people like Boimler and Tendi are knowledgeable and excited about even the mundane Starfleet stuff, even if they're not experienced or good. And then the people in charge, even if they're, it chafes slightly that they take the credit because that was inevitably going to happen. But the mundanity of, we've got a rage zombie outbreak isn't met with the kind of the lack of buy-in that you get from, say, a Deadpool, who'll nope out of the tone of the story.
Like, here is, I think, my one consistent problem with comedy, and that's like in shows and definitely in comedic movies, is that along the way, the idea that there are stakes have disappeared. Because, it's a comedy film. You don't have to care about you don't have to care about stakes. It's all about having some people from Second City just doing, like, unrehearsed improv bits for 5 minutes and we'll just kind of write a film around it. Whereas you've got films like Ghostbusters where there are stakes and there are serious things going on, but there are still jokes. And I think this is kind of where we've talked about in Star Trek, how, like, they mutate into spiders and lemurs, and that's just Tuesday for them. Worf turns into an ape and kills a guy. That's just Tuesday for them. This is a world where, like, all that happens, but because because they're slightly aware they live in the Star Trek universe, this is just clock in, rage zombie virus. Oh man, I hope this is bad. I really hope it doesn't screw up my date tonight.
Yeah. And that is a fascinating part of it.
Like, the stakes in the show, I feel, never get treated as unimportant. Like, the stakes are real, it's just how the characters react is where the comedy comes from. And when the characters are put into peril, it does feel like they're put into peril.
And yeah, we'll see that done more as we dig into more Lower Decks, and better as well. As this feels very much like a proof of concept at this point.
This is definitely we wrote the pilot first before we got a series order.
Yeah, and I think it's probably going to end up being one of the lowest Lower Decks episodes. I know you've had issues with one of the recent ones, but we will discuss that when it comes time. But yeah, as far as this one goes, it's interesting looking at it in comparison with the list, because we've got some real...
I think it should go on number 12. I think it should go on number 12.
What is it with you and the number 12? Is it because Catspaw is still currently at number 12? I was going to say...
Yes.
I think...
Yes.
I think it's oddly comparable to A Matter of Honor, where you get the
Ooh.
Riker work experience, where you get the kind of bacteria fuck up and having to amend it there. And it's that thing of, is it better than that? Like, I'm fine saying, okay, this is better than Cat's Paw, because both are funny, both in very different ways.
Yeah.
I think I would prefer Cat's Paw just slightly, but I've become very enamored of the mystical space bullshit side of Star Trek. So I get that that's just me compared to our objective list here. So yeah, is this better or worse than Riker's work experience?
I think it's slightly worse than Riker's work experience because there is some really kind of there is some good world building, and there is some nice fish out of water. Now, if we'd seen the lower decks Klingon work experience, that would probably be like comedic gold.
Oh god, yeah. Okay.
But at the same time, you do have Riker being offered to be breastfed by a lady Klingon, and Riker just basically going, I'm down.
Of course he's down for that. Okay, fine. Yes, you've won me over.
Although,
yeah.
to make one more Red Dwarf reference, you said the in the credits you have like the alien creature trying to eat it. I couldn't help but think of the line from Red Dwarf where Lister goes, "It's a space creature. It's either going to try to kill us, eat us, or hump us."
Yep.
Being humped to death by a giant space firefly.
Yeah, maybe that creature in the opening credits is just trying to hump for Cerritos. Cerritos?
I hear it as Cerritos, but then again, I've lived here long enough that my accent and how I say some words has drifted.
Well, that's the thing. I've not said the word out loud, and I've watched the show. Like, I saw the latest one yesterday, and somehow it was only reading it out loud. I was like, oh, this sounds weird out of a British voice.
I just say it as Cerritos, but like, unlike the host of the Great British Bake Off, I know how to say taco correctly.
Ah, well, take that, Bake Off guys.
Take that, people who get money to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, badly, apparently.
So this is worse than a matter of honor.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. I win. Cat's Paw is now number 13.
You win.
Morally, I win.
Oh, God. Right, well, I don't know what the mission will be now, whether it'll be like nothing can be better. Unless... yeah. Or if there are enough better things that you'll have to push it so that Genesis ends up at number 13 or something. But yeah.
No, nobody does it better.
What is it going to be like once we hit 69 entries?
Okay, that's when we have to find the sexiest episode of Star Trek.
Okay. So when we hit the point where we'll be adding enough episodes so there's 69.
Or we just take the episode, whatever ranking for 69, and shunt it into its own alternate universe list. So our list has a 68, then just goes straight to 70.
Oh dear.
And 69 lives in its own universe as the horniest piece of Star Trek, which might be the novelization to Star Trek: The Phantom Menace, Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I've yet to dare to read that, but who knows? Maybe one day we'll do a book report on it.
It's horny.
Oh dear.
It's disturbingly horny.
And on that note, we will go from mentions of something disturbingly horny to the exact opposite, I guess, with the most recent Star Trek animated series. And this is Star Trek Prodigy. For some reason, my brain keeps wanting to say Threshold, but no, that's a very interesting episode of Voyager. So yeah, Star Trek Prodigy.
See, I thought you were going to say you keep thinking about X-Men.
I do, but that's different.
Or Spider-Man, because both the Spider-Verse and the X-Men verse have a character called Prodigy.
And as someone who owns a lot of new X-Men and almost all of the Slingers series, I am painfully aware of these. Hell, I had a pitch I had a pitch that I wrote for a series.
Wait.
Slingers.
You own Slingers?
Yeah,
like the really bad 90s comic based on like the Spider-Man
storyline.
Really
90s comic that had 4 variant issue 1s where it wasn't just variant covers, it was variant interior.
Oh, Marvel. You almost deserved that bankruptcy back in the 90s.
Yeah. I liked Chris Cross's art for it. I was already a fan of Chris Cross, not the musician, the comic artist. But 4 variant interiors is a bad idea. Anyway, this is neither about Prodigy from Slingers or Prodigy from X-Men.
This is not a Marvel bankruptcy podcast.
Not currently, no. Maybe one day. Like I wouldn't want to rule it out, but for now at least.
That's our follow-up podcast, Casual Marvel Bankruptcy.
Yeah, just tripped off the tongue. Anyway, back on track, back in the room. Season 1, episodes 1 and 2 of Star Trek Prodigy, titled Lost and Found. These aired on the 28th of October 2021. As of recording, we are like a week or 2 away from it being a year old. It was written by Kevin and Dan Hagman, directed by Ben Hibben, and the UK and US #1 hits are ones I've not heard, but from artists I know. Adele's Easy on Me, and Lil Nas X's Industry Baby.
Ah.
Yeah. Again, don't recall either of those tracks. Obviously, I know the big couple of ones from Lil Nas X, which were both good fun. And Adele's, she's good. I find a lot of her music kind of just blends together in my brain, and that's probably more a me thing than a her thing.
I like her Bond song.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's not the best Bond song, which is Live and Let Die.
Yeah,
but it's no, at least it's not, The Man with the Golden Gun.
I still have a soft spot for View to a Kill, but that's probably because
View to a Kill is awesome.
It is.
Actually, hang on. We all know what the worst Bond song is. It's Die Another Day by Madonna. Yep. I don't actually watch the Bond films. I don't like James Bond as a character. I just have views on Bond songs.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
On that statement, you have 5 minutes starting now. So engage.
Right. Let's get it on. Prodigy, lost and found on a distant prison colony planet deep within the Delta Quadrant. Dal, a young alien boy of an unknown species, dreams of escape. Out on horizon, he spies this kind of robot alien in hiding and is approached by Dreadnought, the robot overseer of the prison. Effie's seen this being, which has been dubbed Fugitive Zero. I will try and avoid calling him Prisoner Zero because that's a different sci-fi franchise close to my heart from Doctor Who. Fugitive Zero causes an explosion which allows Dal to make an attempted escape, which fails. Important thing to note is that translators are forbidden in the prison, so all the different many alien races which are here and mining can't ever communicate to try and escape. A Kazon sells an orphan cat girl to Gwyn, the teenage daughter of the prison's lord and master, known only as the Diviner. He's in a big tube. Gwyn is unsure why the Diviner is having her doing the talking and communication and buying slaves when Dreadnought can do it. Apparently, she can actually speak most of the different languages. And the Diviner wants Gwyn to get Dal to locate Fugitive Zero. He's hunting for something more than Fugitive Zero, but Fugitive Zero is very important. But whatever he's really looking for, he's worried that the Federation will find them. In his cell, Dal hears his voice telling him to try and keep up the hope of escaping. He's the only one who still has hope. Oh god, this is Jeff Johns' Star Trek.
Oh no.
I know. And Gwyn, someone loses an arm, so it is a Jeff Johns Star Trek. Gwyn tries to get answers from Dal. They have a kind of a relationship, and she promises to give him food and actual conversation. Gwyn lets slip that Fugitive Zero is a Medusan, a telepathic energy being which can drive people mad if you look at it. And he does a deal with Gwyn to find Fugitive Zero in exchange for his freedom. He's sent down into the deep core of the mining colony, and he's buddy systemed to a huge rock being to try and find F-Zero and to get to the rock creature to help him. Later on, we'll find out the rock creature's name is Roktak, but his little diagrams of escape doesn't work, and they cause a rockfall, which causes them to fall deeper and deeper into the planet, where they find a starship of obvious Federation design. It's smaller to ones we've seen before, but it definitely has that kind of Starfleet aesthetic. With Fugitive Zero watching them from afar, they make their way on the ship and start pressing buttons. One of these buttons activates the Universal Translator, and we now have the two characters able to speak. And for the first time, we discover that Roktak is actually like a small child by comparison to Dahl, who has this kind of, smart-ass Aladdin, Ezra kind of quality to him.
Cool teen.
A cool, edgy teen. Fugitive Zero just pops up on board, and he reveals that they all need to try and escape. But to pilot the ship, you need an engineer. Thankfully, they know an engineer who is, which is Jankum Pog, which is a Tellarite, which are a race of beings who look kind of like Jack Black in the way they've been designed. Now they can all communicate. Zero reveals that Dahl's actually done a deal to hand them all over, so they don't really have much time to make good on their escape attempt. Roktak brings along Murph, which is an adorable, cute blob of protoplasm who speaks, but the Universal Translator doesn't translate it. Suddenly, Dreadnought, Gwyn, and a series of robot drones surround them, and Dahl tries to talk his way out, but Dreadnought doesn't buy it and takes Dahl and sends him out to the outer rim of the prison, which is an area where people rarely come back from. Gwyn is starting to pull Orlando Calrissian and realizing that this deal is getting worse every time. And hang on, I missed my notes. But she's still helping Dreadnought and the Diviner with their plan by engineering another exploit. There are a lot of sabotage attempts to help people escape in this episode, so I've kind of lost on the third attempt here. And Dahl escapes.
Speaking of losing on the third attempt. That's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Who thought it would Prodigy that would...
Well, Prodigy's double length, so we are in in terms of animated series, we are kind of in pilot length territory for this one.
Kind of, yeah. It's that thing where it was interesting to see. But yes, anyway.
A lot of stuff is going on.
Okay, so I'm going to start the stopwatch now.
Dahl heads back to the ship, and then Gwyn arrives, and Dahl is trying to get her to join them so they can all escape together. Then Dreadnought arrives with his drones again. They knew the ship was here. It's called the USS Protostar, and this is what they've been mining for this entire time. How a Federation starship ended up in the core of a planet, we do not know yet. Dahl tells Zero that they should use Gwyn as hostage. Zero and Roktak think it's a terrible idea, but Jankum Pog is a Tellarite, and Tellarites love to argue. And so he basically Leroy Jenkins the situation and immediately starts punching everyone around him, and now they're getting into a big old fight. Zero and the others get on board the ship and start taking it off, but unfortunately the shields aren't working and need to reactivate the shields to get the ship working. Dahl is stuck on the top of the ship with a power unit to plug into the shields. Meanwhile, Dreadnought turns out to have giant robot pincer legs and is now just crab walking up the ship. The Protostar is flying through the inside of the planet in a way that spaceships and gravity usually don't work in Star Trek, but sod it. We're operating on Kelvin rules, I think, for this show. So there we go. It's for kids. It's fun. They get the shields working just in time to knock off Dreadnought, and they finally escape into deep space, which looks like a beautiful purple gaseous nebula. They manage to take Gwyn with them, who is, I'm guessing, is going to be like the Zuko of this show, and she's just kind of...
Oh, she had big Zuko vibes.
Big Zuko vibes, and she's just kind of tied up and looking smug that they don't know what to do. And when they mention that they need help, a hologram appears of Janeway. It turns out that she is hologram Janeway, and she's ready to assist them. Back on the prison colony, The diviner has broken out of his tube and he's now naked and covered in goo. And he screams at Dreadnought to find him his ship.
Wow.
And time.
2 minutes, 25 seconds over. I mean, yeah, you're quite right in that this is definitely the longer of them. And yeah, it's so I said at the start of this I didn't really get on or didn't continue much with Rebels. And at first it looked a bit basic, but
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Have you, as you're a 40, 41?
42.
As you're a 42-year-old man, how much in the way of kids' cartoons have you been keeping up on over the last decade or so? Out of curiosity.
God, decade's a tricky thing. Like I've watched the things that I'd associate with kind of kids' cartoons that probably aren't entirely just for kids, like your Gravity Falls, your Adventure Time.
Yeah, like your like Avatar, Legend of Korra. Yeah. Okay, so you're kind of on the kind of same sort of level as me. I've watched shows like Steven Universe, which is great fun, and We Bare Bears, which is adorable. It's heartwarming and adorable fun. So yeah, like we both come in like the same generation of kids cartoons, like your 80s Transformers and He-Man and your Brave Stars and your Dungeons and Dragons, and then all like the trippy Magic Roundabout weird stuff. And like this does suffer from like that very kind of this is written for kids with that kind of energy and that very kind of like brash, larger than life. But yeah, I'm just monopolizing the conversation. Go back to talking about Rebels.
Yeah, so when I started watching Rebels, I knew that it was a show that is evidently it's got a big fandom, and while it looked a bit basic and the stories were a bit basic, I could appreciate it and I could see where it would go. This didn't feel like as much like Star Trek as Rebels felt like Star Wars.
Yeah.
At least not this early on. And I know you've got your Janeway reveal right at the end, and you've got a few bits and pieces. Like there's a Kazon. I was shocked to see a Kazon, and
you've got some aliens.
Yeah.
I definitely think that this is probably for kids whose first exposure to Star Trek may have been the Kelvin films. It has that same energy and vibe.
Yeah, it's got that kind of some of that tone, and it feels like it's got that Rebels sort of energy. To be honest, if the spaceship didn't look like that, and if the alien races weren't the ones that are known Star Trek ones, it could have been just anything with any sort of alien thing. And that's fine. That's completely fine. I'd originally seen the first half of this, and I meant to see the rest, just to see where it goes, and didn't feel in a massive rush to. I'm pleased I saw the back half of it, and, actually saw Janeway, actually saw Jason Mantzoukas, which always a joy to see Jason Mantzoukas in a role. Of course he's a Tellarite. Of course he's someone that kind of punchy.
He does bring some maximum Derek to the role.
Yes. And yeah, you always need something like that.
Although, like, it is clear, like, they wanted, like, when they made the character, I'm just thinking, they wanted Jack Black. But who could they get who wasn't Jack Black? Because, like, this character, if the character said skadoosh, I would buy it. Like, he's definitely, like, a Jack Black type.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe they'll get Jack Black to play a Tellarite at some point. We can only hope. And as someone that read a lot of the RPG content years and years ago, going, oh, Tellarites were one of the founding kind of people. Why aren't they in anything? And I know it's because the makeup looks a bit weird, but it's always quite nice getting to see them somewhere, even if this is apparently the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
So it feels a little weird seeing one. And with Fugitive Zero, who, one of the first things we hear is like, yes, we should catch him. It's like, Fugitive Zero is neither him nor her. Fugitive Zero is kind of odd.
British. Fugitive Zero is British.
Yes.
I think he's voiced by
they, I think.
I think they're voiced by Ferb from Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah, see, that's one you've lost me on. I've got no clue who that is. Angus William Jake Imrie, which I've got to admire someone with almost as many names as me.
We've been accused of having the most British names.
Oh, cool.
I think he might actually beat the two of us by having the most British names.
That is great. That's, yeah, I'm impressed.
It's a name more British than ours.
So yeah, Fugitive Zero was an interesting one. Like a Medusan that would drive someone mad just to look at them living in a ball, and has an interesting visual design, and compared to being some kind of eldritch being / desperate fugitive, turns out to be relatively chill about this whole situation. It's like, well,
yeah,
I'm not used to having limbs. What is any of this?
Yeah, when you're an energy being, like, you can just chill.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, the cast, like Dalrymple, I assume of the House of El, was
he did go on about hope a lot, so quite possibly he might actually be an expatriate from the planet Krypton.
Oh shit, maybe. Yeah, again, back to Jeffrey Johns and all of his interference. So yeah, Dal was the weak link, being just generically lead kid kind of thing. Like Gwyn, as you said, big Zuko energy. Always enjoy a Zuko. Rock Talk was good fun. And of course Jason Mantzoukas. And then some slime with Murph.
Yeah.
Both good. Both fine.
Like, it has, it's definitely a show. It's a show written for kids. But as someone who grew up on the Transformers cartoon in the 80s, I would love to have a show where like there's actual writing and drama, and not just some good writers just going, I can pay beer money with this.
So it's tricky. I can see some potential, and I feel more enthusiastic about checking it out now than I was having just seen the first half of Lost and Found. I want to see it become something Star Trekky. And when we first saw the promotional art, it felt very much like, what are all these? Like, what are these things? And seeing a Tellarite, a Medusan, seeing these kind of things, like, you don't have to reference the aliens or the literal things. Like, hey, you guys know what Batleths are. You know Troy. But as long as it gets the spirit and the vibe of the exploration, the go do a Starfleet, all of that, soon that'd be good.
There is a slight Trek vibe, or just in the kind of like, I think the meaning of the message of the episode, which is, alone you can't really do anything, but if you can learn to communicate with the people who are around you, despite the fact they're different, you can form something better.
Actually, that is one thing I've really liked. The idea that to keep all these people imprisoned, take away their ability to communicate.
That's a nice bit of like SF plotting.
Yeah, and you get that, especially with Rock Top. The whole thing of like, oh my god, this rocky thing that you only communicate with in growls and all of that. It's like, well, actually, no, she is a person. Even with that, and the moment you start being able to communicate, realizing, oh, okay, yeah, this is who this is, and you can suddenly talk amicably. And the same with Jankum as well, who distressingly does talk in the third person, which is always a sign of a terrible person. But again, fine for Jankum to talk like that. Because I think
Jankum Pog can talk how Jankum Pog likes.
Hell yeah. So, I think, again, similar to Second Contact, it's an interesting challenge to work out where this goes as far as our big list. Because it's not great. And while it's got some foundations, those like eventual results will be judged on their own merit separate to this. So, I mean, I'm definitely thinking lower half for this. You know, it's definitely definitely lower than
It's lower than 13. That's all I care about.
Of course. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely below Encounter at Farpoint, because it definitely feels like more of a Star Trek, despite all the monologuing and all the talk about your job descriptions. It is, at least from the get-go, a Star Trek.
I feel it's going to be better than Despite Yourself, the Discovery Mirror Universe, because I feel like there's a lot of talking, but not really anything else in terms of like this one. Like Despite Yourself has a lot of talk about what the kind of values are, and then the characters never really sort of. It's more characters reacting to information and just doing stuff than like an actual sort of plot. And you know the bringing like you bring together all the disparate elements of the characters.
Well, the fun elements of Despite Yourself, the Captain Killy of it all, are fine and fun.
Yeah.
But you still have a number of... They don't do a Starfleet kind of...
There is a lot... there is a lot of, flying... There's a lot of, flying around, and, this is... this is adventure... pulp sci-fi this is Star Trek at its kind of pulpiest. I did kind of I felt a bit sad that they didn't try and rescue when someone brought up the idea of rescuing everyone in the prison. There's we can't, there's so many, and I feel sad that the cat girl got left behind, but I feel that might just be a furthering plot point.
I did not expect that. I did not expect them to leave that child behind who, Gwyn, yeah, she's on the road to a redemption arc. But she does buy a child early on in this.
I wonder if the cat child is going to be the replacement Gwyn because Gwyn left it behind.
Oh, that would be an interesting turn to it.
I've only seen the next 2 or 3 episodes after this because life got in the way.
Yeah.
I kind of know the gist where it kind of goes immediately, where you have Janeway trying to train them because she thinks they're Starfleet cadets because the Protostar is a training ship.
Yeah.
So you have the push and pull of Dal, being your typical, we don't need anyone, I'm the best. Dal is kind of the weak link because I think he falls into that problem that some kids' cartoons have, in which your main character also for some reason also has to be the comic relief. And to be the slap, the kind of has to be both the hero and the fool.
It's a tricky one to balance there.
It's not like Aang in Avatar, where Aang's goofiness is at times almost a facade to kind of cover up the fact that he knows that his screwing up did kind of lead to his entire tribe being wiped out, and the situation the world finds itself in because he didn't fulfill his duty as the Avatar. But the show then quickly makes Sokka the comic relief, but also shows where Sokka's strengths and positive qualities lie beyond him being the funny one.
Yeah, it does an interesting balance between making fun of folks and still letting them have stories and arcs and pathos and emotions.
It's also I really hate to keep saying it's a show for kids because it feels like I'm being dismissive when I'm just watching to go, man, I wish I had this show as a kid. Instead, I had Kirk and Spock doing the I need the toilet run.
I 100% get that. I remember, much like how these days with Casual Trek, I've had a couple of instances of, oh my god, I could do this. It's wait, no, that's not being casual enough. This is very good training for me to not immediately dive all in on a fandom the way that I do, because I've done this before, and stuff like X-Men have stuck, same with Legion of Superheroes and all that. But as a kid, yeah, I would be drawing these characters and writing little adventures or anything like that. I could 100% see myself already being interested in this world, even if it would have, my dad or so on tutting and going, well, this isn't my Star Trek.
In my day, it feels, this is one of those, like, yeah, we're two people who are far closer to 40 than either of us want to admit. Opinions and hot takes on a show which is, I would say, for like the 9 to 15 demographic.
Yeah, I'd definitely say just under 10 to just over kind of thing.
Like this, I think this is definitely for like your Avatar age group and not your Adventure Time age group. Although Adventure Time does go into like dark places.
God, one of the other things this reminds me of, and I'll be brief here because we need to rank this on the list and close this out. This episode that I figured would be short because it's all about the animated series. I got given a preview copy of the Warhammer Adventures, kind of Warhammer for Kids prose novels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, at UK Games Expo, I want to say just before the COVID times and all that. So it took me ages to read it. And
I have the audiobook of the 40K one, which I only have because it was like $4 and read by David Tennant.
Oh, wow.
And I'm part of me's like going, how do you do 40K for kids?
That's how.
And was that? Yeah, that's how.
Yeah, it's not for me because it's Warhammer and it's for children, neither of which are my wheelhouse really. But again, I could see past Charlie vibing with it in a way that would be a good gateway to other Warhammer things like this, leading to wanting to do other Star Trek things. And the thing I'll be really intrigued about is if, like, how they've made elements of Lower Decks canon and they're going to do a live action crossover, if they refer to any of the things that are uniquely Prodigy in other Star Treks going on as well. That I would be intrigued to see, or whether this ends up much like the Kelvin timeline, being kind of, that can happen over there.
Yeah. I don't know what the general reaction has been to Prodigy. Like, everyone kind of talks about and raves about Lower Decks, but I feel we've only had like 8 episodes, I think, before the hiatus, and we're getting the rest of the first season in a couple of weeks. So I feel that out of the Star Trek shows we've gotten, I feel like sadly this may have had like the least impact, just simply because of just how time has worked.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying better than Despite Yourself.
Yes.
I'm saying worse than Encounter at Farpoint. So I think that means, that this is our new number 16. This is the lowest one that we've ranked out of today, but that's no slight against it because Despite Yourself is, I think, the lowest of the this is still good kind of episodes, or, middling to good. After that, it only gets bad with Strange New World.
Although, given some of the names of characters, I could imagine a character appearing in Prodigy called Grappler Zorn and not having it just sound clunky.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely got that style name-wise. And again, that's something to remember with this sort of a show. You're in a universe with someone called Grappler Zorn. So when you see someone called Rock Talk or Jank and Pog or Murph, look at the rest of the universe before you judge, That means our list is up to 21 entries now. That's exciting. That feels like it's definitely growing there. That's it from us. And just remains to tell you where you can find us online. So I can be found on Twitter at Charlie_EN, where I post about X-Men literally every day. And I've been surprisingly positive about some of the late era dregs of the 90s so far. So hopefully it'll keep up. Outside of that, I also talk about role-playing games on Who Dares Rolls. That's been a little quiet lately, but I'm hoping by the end of the year I'm going to have a video or two, possibly even a written article for folks that are interested in those to check out. And on skyshark.itch.io for my comic Explosion High and a supplement for Wander Home that I've written, all based around my walks up in Northumberland. How about you, Mars?
I am found on Twitter, far too much my liking, at @manmiles. And as always, other places where I can be found will be mentioned when I have them. Although there might be some stuff coming down in the pipeline.
Ooh, exciting. Well, that's it from us. So it just remains for us to humbly ask you lot to, unlike the crew of the Enterprise in the first episode, go do a Starfleet.
Live long and have a jelly baby.
Goodbye. You've been listening to Casual Trek by Charlie Etheridge Nunn and Miles Reed Lobato. Music by Alfred Etheridge Nunn. Casual Trek's part of the Nerd and Tie network, and if you want to support us monetarily because you love what we do that much, you can now do that by going to Ko-fi and looking up Casual Trek. There's a link in the show notes.